Ever wondered what freedom sounds like? In Africa, it doesn't roar. It sings, glides, and sometimes steals your lunch. From the world's fastest runner with feathers to eagles that could snatch a monkey midair, these are 25 bird species so wild, so unreal, you'll start to think the savanna was designed by a mad artist. Here, beauty comes with attitude. One bird wears eyeliner better than most humans. Another literally walks on water. And one, it kicks snakes to death in style, high heels included. But tell me, when nature gives you colors brighter than any paint box and wings stronger than gravity, who really rules the skies? The predators or the poets? Stay tuned, because by the end of this journey, you might find out that Africa's birds aren't just survivors. They're the true architects of the wild. So, ready to meet them? Let's spread our wings and dive into the heart of the savanna. Tell me something. When you picture a bird, you think of feathers, wings, maybe singing on a tree branch, right? Now erase all that and imagine a bird taller than LeBron James, faster than a racehorse, and with legs that could send a lion flying. Welcome to the ostrich, nature's running joke that somehow became the undisputed champion of the African savanna. It can't fly, sure, but it doesn't need to. When you can hit 70 kilometers per hour, wings are overrated. That's faster than most speed limits in small African towns. And here's a fun thought. If an ostrich entered the Olympics, it could finish the 100-meter dash in under 6 seconds. Imagine Usain Bolt losing to a giant feathered bowling pin. Those huge eyes, the largest of any land animal, each one bigger than its brain. Yeah, not exactly a scholar, but they make up for it with eyesight so sharp they can spot a predator from 2 miles away. And when the danger comes close, they don't run right away, they kick. One hit from those legs could break a predator's spine. It's like a black belt wearing feathers and mascara. And speaking of that mascara, ostriches actually have eyelashes. Long, thick, perfect for close-ups kind of lashes. Nature's ultimate contradiction. Part beauty queen, part bouncer. But what's really amazing is their teamwork. A whole group of females lays eggs in one huge nest, sometimes over 20 of them. The dominant female picks which eggs to keep in the center, the safest spot. At night, the male, darker feathered, takes the night shift, blending with the shadows. By day, the pale feathered females take over. It's like a perfect family tag team, run by instinct and survival. So here's the real question. If the world's largest bird can't fly, but still outruns almost everything that can, maybe flight isn't the peak of evolution after all. Would you rather soar above danger or stomp it into the dirt? Because on the African savanna, the king doesn't always have wings. If the ostrich is the savanna sprinter, then the Cory bustard is its heavyweight pilot. A bird that looks like it skipped flying school, but somehow still aced the landing test. Meet Africa's gentle giant of the air, the heaviest flying bird on the continent, tipping the scales at almost 20 kilograms. That's like lifting a Thanksgiving turkey, giving it wings, and asking it to take off. So how does it manage to fly? Well, slowly, reluctantly, and only when it absolutely must. The Cory bustard prefers to walk, one deliberate noble step at a time. It's got that slow-motion swagger that says, I could fly if I wanted to, but walking looks better on me. Its feathers are camouflaged in dusty browns and soft grays, perfect for blending into the golden grasslands. You might not see it until it moves, and then you realize it's the size of a small child. When danger strikes, instead of panicking, it freezes, relying on camouflage. Because when you weigh as much as a bowling ball, running isn't exactly elegant. But here's the twist. When a male wants to impress, this calm, grounded bird turns into a full-blown show-off. He puffs up his throat like a balloon, fans his tail, and struts across the open field, booming like a drum. It's not just a mating display, it's an air show for creatures that barely believe he can fly. And yes, that booming call can be heard over a kilometer away. Imagine serenading your crush by yelling across the entire savanna. Fun fact, Cory bustards are known to get tipsy. They sometimes eat fermented fruit, get mildly drunk, and stumble around like they're leaving an African bar at midnight. Even the wild has its party animals. But here's the question. If you're the heaviest flyer on Earth, do you still count as a bird when flying as your last resort? Or does mastering the ground make you even more evolved? Because in the land of the swift and the fierce, the Cory bustard proves that sometimes being grounded is the ultimate power move. What happens when a bird decides it wants to be a lion? You get the martial eagle, Africa's true apex predator of the skies. This isn't your average bird of prey. This is a 6-foot wingspan tank with feathers, the kind of raptor that makes other raptors nervous. It's called martial for a reason, from the Latin martialis, meaning of war. And trust me, this bird was built for battle. Its talons are the size of a man's fist, and it can crush a monkey's skull in one strike. Even small antelopes aren't safe. Imagine looking up and realizing a bird just stole your lunch, and it weighs more than your dog. Martial eagles spend most of their time soaring thousands of feet up, scanning everything below. They don't flap much. They glide silently, like a shadow that kills. When they finally dive, they can hit 240 kilometers an hour. It's less bird flight and more guided missile. And that cry, deep, harsh, commanding, it's the sound that says, I run this sky. Here's the wild part. Despite their power, these eagles are surprisingly loyal. A pair may stay together for life, building a nest big enough for a grown human to lie in. They guard their territory fiercely, using the same nesting tree for decades. In a world of chaos, they're the definition of commitment. Dangerous, majestic, and oddly romantic. But being on top isn't easy. Habitat loss and human conflict have made them rarer across Africa. When farmers see a shadow pass over their livestock, they sometimes shoot first. And suddenly, the ruler of the skies has to fight for survival on the ground. So here's your thought. When the most powerful hunter in the savanna is struggling to survive, what does that say about the balance of power between us and nature? Are we protecting the wild, or just winning a fight we shouldn't have started? Because the martial eagle doesn't need a throne. It already rules every horizon it touches. Now here's a bird that looks like it walks straight out of a fashion show and straight into a snake fight. Meet the secretary bird, the savanna's strangest superhero. Part eagle, part crane, and 100% drama. At first glance, you might think it's just a tall, fancy bird in high heels, strutting through the grass like it owns the runway. But don't let the elegant look fool you. This bird is a professional assassin. It hunts snakes on foot, kicking them to death with lightning precision. Yep, it fights cobras with legs instead of claws. Nature said, who needs talons when you have a pair of deadly stilettos? Those long lashes and that black feather quill pen crest behind its head. That's where it gets its name. Early explorers thought it looked like a 19th century secretary with pens tucked behind her ear. So they named one of Africa's deadliest predators after an office job. Fun fact, that's possibly the biggest branding mistake in natural history. When it hunts, the secretary bird covers miles of open land, stomping on anything that moves. Snakes, rodents, lizards, even small hares. It delivers a kick so powerful it can shatter bones in a single strike, moving faster than you can blink. Each hit lands with 5 times the force of its body weight. That's like a human crushing a watermelon with one foot, in heels. And when it's not fighting, it performs a quirky dance, a mix of leaps, wing flaps, and high steps that looks somewhere between martial arts and awkward enthusiasm. It's funny, fierce, and somehow still graceful. But here's a twist. Despite being worshipped in African folklore as a symbol of protection, the secretary bird's population is now declining, mostly due to habitat loss. Its proud stride is disappearing from parts of the savanna where it once ruled. So let's ask, if the bird that kills cobras is losing its ground, what does that say about the rest of us? Can beauty and brutality truly survive in the same creature, or in the same world we're changing every day? Because in Africa's grand theater of survival, the secretary bird is proof that grace, can still be lethal. If the African savanna had a fashion icon, this would be it. The lilac-breasted roller doesn't just show up, it arrives. It's like nature went, let's make a bird that looks photoshopped, and then hit saturation max. We're talking turquoise wings, a lilac chest, emerald back, and tail streamers that shimmer like silk ribbons in the wind. Every feather screams confidence. No camouflage, no blending in, just pure, unapologetic color. As if this bird knows it's the main character every time it lands on a branch. And here's the fun part. Those colors aren't for hiding, they're for showing off. Rollers are acrobats of the air. During courtship, they perform dramatic dives, rolls, and spins. That's where their name comes from, the roller. It's basically an aerial love story mixed with stunt flying. Imagine a bird doing parkour just to impress its crush. Now that's effort, but there's substance behind the style. These birds are fierce hunters. They perch high, spot prey from above, and swoop down to snatch grasshoppers or small lizards midair. They've mastered the art of the surprise attack while looking fabulous. Even their call is iconic, a raspy, rolling rack, rack, rack that sounds like they're laughing at your fashion sense. And maybe they are. Fun fact, many African nations consider the lilac-breasted roller a symbol of peace and beauty. In some places, it's said to bring good luck if one crosses your path at sunrise. That's a pretty good reputation for a bird that spends half its day yelling and showing off flips. Here's the twist. Those bright colors aren't just vanity. They actually help the birds identify each other from a distance. A secret code of, I belong here. So let's ask, when standing out makes you a target, is it bravery or foolishness to be this bright? Would you rather blend into safety or live loud enough to be unforgettable? Because in a world of browns and grays, the lilac-breasted roller reminds us that sometimes survival itself can be an art form. What's bright red, lightning fast, and allergic to boring? The southern carmine bee-eater, a bird so dazzling, it looks like someone spilled paint all over the sky. If the lilac-breasted roller was bold, this one is flamboyant. A crimson missile with turquoise wings zipping through the air like it's late for a party. This bird lives for drama. During breeding season, thousands of them gather on sandy riverbanks, carving tunnels into the cliffs to build their nests. From a distance, the whole wall looks alive. A fluttering, glowing coral reef in the middle of dry land. It's not just a colony, it's a carnival. And inside every burrow, a pair of tiny birds planning the next generation of high-speed hunters. You heard that right. They eat bees. Real, stinging, furious bees. But instead of getting stung, they've mastered a trick. They snatch the bee midair, fly to a perch, and whack it against a branch to squeeze out the venom sac. It's like bird kung fu. Elegant, precise, and deadly efficient. Tell me that's not genius. They hunt by sunlight, using those shimmering feathers to blend into the glare of the sky. And sometimes they even follow large animals or fires, waiting for insects to scatter in panic before swooping in for the feast. Smart, stylish, and opportunistic. Basically the influencer of the bird world. But here's the fun twist. These birds migrate in enormous flocks across southern Africa, and local people sometimes call them the bringers of color, because when they arrive, it feels like the dry landscape suddenly remembers how to dream. Still, there's a bittersweet truth. As riverbanks vanish and insect numbers drop, their nesting sites shrink every year. The carnival gets quieter. So here's the question. If a bird can live off stings and still sing, what's our excuse for not thriving through life's little pains? Because the southern carmine bee-eater proves that even in a world of dust and danger, a splash of red can rewrite the sky. Ever seen something so small yet so perfectly built? You wonder if nature was just showing off? Meet the little bee-eater, Africa's pocket-sized jewel. It's barely 7 inches long, weighs less than a tennis ball, and still manages to look like a flying gemstone. Golden throat, emerald back, turquoise eyebrows. It's like someone shrunk a rainbow and gave it wings. Unlike its louder cousin, the southern carmine, this one prefers intimacy over spectacle. No noisy colonies, no cliffside chaos, just cozy pairs or tiny families perched on a twig, scanning the air for insects. And when it spots a bee, bam! It darts out, snatches it mid-flight, returns to its perch, and smacks it against the branch to remove the stinger. Elegant, efficient, and a little bit savage. What makes the little bee eater so charming isn't just its beauty, it's its lifestyle. These birds mate for life, build their nests together, and often sit side by side, touching shoulders like an old couple who still enjoy the sunset. They even preen each other's feathers, nature's version of saying, "I got you." But don't mistake sweetness for weakness. They're lightning quick, bold enough to attack wasps, and can take down prey bigger than you'd expect. They live in some of Africa's toughest habitats, from savannas to semi-deserts. Proof that size isn't strength, attitude is. Here's a fun fact. Little bee eaters often form neighborhood watches. Several pairs nest close together, sounding alarm calls when predators approach. If teamwork had feathers, this would be it. And yet, there's something poetic about how quiet they are. They don't need to dominate the sky or paint the landscape red. They just exist beautifully in small, brilliant flashes, reminding us that wonder doesn't have to shout. So here's the question. If something this tiny can brighten the savannah every single day, what's our excuse for not bringing color into our own world? Because sometimes the smallest wings carry the biggest light. What if velvet could fly? That's the first thing you'll think when sunlight hits a violet-backed starling. This tiny bird, no bigger than a sparrow, explodes in color the second it moves. Its back shines in deep metallic purple, so vivid it looks like liquid amethyst poured over snow-white feathers. It's not just beautiful, it's hypnotic. But here's the plot twist. That stunning violet, only the males get it. The females are plain brown and white. Camouflage, practical, invisible in the brush. Classic nature move, right? He's out there dazzling the world, while she's the one making sure the next generation doesn't get eaten. And you've got to wonder, is beauty a blessing or a liability when it makes you stand out like neon? When breeding season hits, males show off like it's prom night. They puff their feathers, sing their liquid metallic whistles, and chase females through the trees in shimmering flashes of purple and white. Once he wins her over, though, surprise, he's gone. He leaves her to handle the nest and the kids. Yep, even in the bird world, some guys still ghost. Despite the drama, these starlings are extraordinary parents. At least the moms are. They build neat, hidden nests in tree cavities, laying tiny turquoise eggs. When the chicks hatch, the metallic purple father occasionally returns, just long enough to drop off food, like an awkward relative who forgot the birthday gift. They're also nomads, following fruiting trees across Africa, spreading seeds and color wherever they go. You can hear them before you see them, a chorus of whistles that sound like laughter echoing through the heat. Fun fact, that violet shine isn't pigment at all, it's physics. The color comes from microscopic feather structures that bend light, just like prisms do. So technically, they are living rainbows. So here's a question to chew on. When beauty fades, what still defines you? Your color or your song? Because in the endless gold of the savannah, the violet-backed starling reminds us that true brilliance isn't skin deep, it's light deep. If birds had hairstyles, this one would be the rock star. The African hoopoe doesn't just arrive, it makes an entrance. Chestnut orange feathers, zebra-striped wings, and that ridiculous yet glorious crest. A fan of feathers, it pops open like, yes, I know I look good. It's nature's version of a mohawk, and somehow, it totally works. The hoopoe isn't shy about showing off either. When it lands, it flicks that crest up and down like it's taking a bow after every performance. It struts around the grass, long curved bill in the dirt, flipping leaves and soil in search of beetles and grubs. Elegant? Maybe not. Effective? Absolutely. That beak is like a precision tool. It can pull out worms buried inches below the surface. Here's a fun twist. That stunning bird smell? Yeah, it stinks. Hoopoes actually produce a foul odor during nesting, thanks to oily secretions they spread over their feathers to repel predators. It's a perfume only a mother could love. But hey, it works. No one messes with a bird that smells like it's been living in a swamp for a week. But don't let the smell fool you. This bird's flight is pure poetry, fluttering up and down in soft, looping waves like a butterfly that took flight lessons. Their call, a soft hoop-hoo, hoop-hoo, is so distinct it gave them their name. And if you listen closely, it sounds almost like laughter echoing through the savanna, like the bird knows something we don't. In many African cultures, the hoopoe is a symbol of wisdom and protection. Some legends say it can guide travelers through the desert or warn of danger with its call. Even King Solomon was said to understand the language of the hoopoe, the bird that bridged heaven and earth. But here's what's wild. This little showy creature spends much of its time alone. Doesn't need a crowd to shine. It just hops, hums, and hunts, perfectly content being itself. So here's the thought. Would you rather blend in and stay unnoticed, or walk your own path, crest high, even if the world thinks you're odd? Because the African hoopoe proves that sometimes standing out is the most natural thing in the world. Close your eyes for a second and imagine the sound of Africa. Not drums, not thunder, but a cry. That clear, haunting call that echoes over rivers and savannas. That's the African fish eagle. And if you've ever heard it, you'll never forget it. This bird doesn't just rule the skies, it defines them. White head, chestnut body, black wings. It's like someone dressed a bald eagle for an African safari. And yes, it's every bit as majestic. They say its call is the voice of Africa, a wild rising scream that says, "This land is alive." Now the name gives it away. It loves fish, but the way it hunts, pure cinematic perfection. It perches high on a tree, eyes locked on the shimmering surface below. Then silence breaks. It dives, wings folded, talons stretched. In one clean strike, it snatches a fish from the water's skin. Barely a splash, no second chance. That's decades of evolution boiled down to a moment of grace. Here's the wild part. Its grip is so strong, sometimes it catches a fish too heavy to lift and gets dragged underwater. But instead of letting go, it swims to shore using its wings like oars. Imagine a raptor paddling to safety, half terrifying, half adorable. African fish eagles are fiercely loyal. They mate for life, often returning to the same tree year after year, building nests so large they could fit a person inside. Each morning they sit side by side on their perch, calling in duet, their voices rising together across the misty water. A love song that doubles as a territorial warning. But here's the deeper layer. Wherever you find clean rivers, you'll find these eagles. Where the water dies, they vanish. They're like nature's alarm system, reminding us that the health of the land begins with the water that feeds it. So here's the question. Is power about strength or balance? Because this bird doesn't conquer its world, it belongs to it. And maybe that's why the African fish eagle's cry still sends shivers down your spine. It's not just a sound, it's a reminder. That wild freedom is still out there, waiting just beyond the water's edge. Some birds look graceful, some look powerful. And then there's the saddle-billed stork, a creature so striking it looks like it walks straight out of a surreal painting. Black, white, gold, red, yellow. The color palette of a royal flag, all packed into one enormous bird. At nearly 1.5 meters tall, it's like the supermodel of the wetlands. Elegant, silent, and impossible to ignore. But here's the fun part. Despite its fancy looks, this bird doesn't make a sound. No call, no song, nothing. Instead, it communicates by clattering its massive bill, a deep wooden clack, clack, clack that echoes over the riverbanks like distant drum beats. It's eerie, ancient, almost ceremonial. The kind of sound that makes you stop and look, even if you don't know why. And that bill, oh, that bill, Long, bright red with a black band and a golden saddle near the base. That's where its name comes from. But it's not just decoration, it's a surgical tool. The saddle-billed stork spears fish, frogs, even small birds, snapping them up with sniper precision. It hunts in absolute silence. No splashing, no chaos, just one clean strike. You know what's rare? These birds mate for life, true partners. They hunt together, preen together, and take turns raising chicks in enormous stick nests perched in trees above the floodplains. When they reunite, they bow and bill clatter in rhythm, like an elegant dance no human could choreograph better. Fun fact, in ancient African folklore, this stork was a symbol of purity and guardianship. Villagers believed seeing one near water meant the rains would come soon. Even today, it's considered a good omen, a messenger between heaven and the living earth. But here's the question. When silence itself can command attention, what does that say about power? Do the loudest always lead, or do the quiet ones shape the world in ways we barely notice? Because the saddle-billed stork doesn't need noise to be heard. It just stands there, still, flawless. A reminder that true presence never has to shout. Now this one walks on water. No miracles, no camera tricks, just physics, confidence, and really long toes. Meet the African jacana, better known as the Jesus bird of the wetlands. With toes that can spread wider than its own body, it tiptoes across floating lily pads like it's late for a divine appointment. It's small, chestnut brown with a snow-white face and baby blue forehead shield. Delicate, elegant, and surprisingly bossy. Because here's the twist. In jacana society, the females rule. They're larger, more aggressive, and they don't do parenting. Instead, they court multiple males, lay eggs in several nests, and then leave the guys to do all the work. That's right. In this world, the dads are the single parents. Picture it, a tiny male jacana, legs splayed wide on the lily pads, balancing 4 chicks under his wings like a stressed-out babysitter. When danger comes, he tucks them all under his feathers and somehow runs across the water carrying them like a feathery Uber. If that's not Father of the Year material, I don't know what is. Their whole lives are a balancing act, literally. They feed on insects, snails, and crustaceans that hide among the lilies, darting and pecking with incredible precision. Too slow and they sink. Too fast, and the ripples give them away. It's a perfect performance of grace under pressure. Fun fact, those long toes aren't just for walking. They also spread their weight evenly so they can stand on plants that would collapse under most birds. Basically, they've turned the swamp into their personal dance floor. But here's the question. When survival depends on staying light, not strong, what does that say about the real meaning of power? Maybe dominance isn't about who rules, but who can adapt, stay calm, and keep walking, even when the ground shifts beneath them. Because the African jacana proves one thing. You don't need to soar to be divine. Sometimes the miracle isn't flying above the water, it's learning how to walk on it. You've heard ducks quack, honk, maybe even scream. But have you ever heard one whistle? Meet the white-faced whistling duck, the jazz musician of Africa's wetlands, a bird that turns every flight into a symphony. You can spot it instantly. That crisp white face and chocolate brown body, like it's wearing a tuxedo to a pool party. They gather by the hundreds around lakes and marshes, and when one takes off, the whole flock follows. A chorus of high-pitched whistles filling the air, like 100 tiny flutes floating over the water. Now here's the cool part. These ducks don't migrate far. They move with the rain. Wherever the water appears, they appear too, filling the wetlands with life, sound, and motion. And unlike most ducks, they're night flyers, rising under moonlight in graceful waves, their whistles echoing through the darkness like soft laughter. It's haunting, beautiful, and kind of romantic. A lullaby only Africa could compose. But don't let that gentle music fool you. These ducks are tough. They live through droughts, predators, and heat that would melt most species. When the ponds dry up, they huddle close, waiting for the rains to return, refusing to leave their home turf. They don't chase paradise, they endure it. And they're social. Oh, extremely social. They feed together, roost together, and even perform synchronized preening sessions, like feathered flash mobs keeping each other clean. When danger comes, one alarm call sends hundreds scrambling. A reminder that in the wild, unity is survival. Fun fact, scientists say their whistle language is so distinct, each flock may have its own accent. Imagine regional duck dialects, like quacklish versus whistlish. But here's the deeper question. In a world obsessed with standing out, what if survival depends on harmony instead? Because these ducks don't dominate the wetlands, they fill them. They remind us that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not roar or conquer, but simply belong to the song. If you think fishing is a patient sport, wait till you meet the African skimmer, a bird that fishes without stopping, without splashing, and barely even blinking. It's the slickest pilot over Africa's rivers. A black and white missile with a neon orange bill slicing through the sunset like a living blade. Here's how it hunts, and it's genius. The lower half of its bill is longer than the upper. That's not a deformity, it's a design. As it flies inches above the water, the bottom beak drags through the surface. When it hits a fish, snap! The bill shuts faster than you can blink. No dive, no splash, no hesitation. Just precision, speed, and silence. It's like nature invented its own drone long before humans did. Watching a flock of skimmers hunt at dusk is pure poetry. Their wings slicing the air in unison, bills tracing golden ripples across the water, the whole river shimmering under the African sun. It's hypnotic. You don't watch it, you feel it. But here's the crazy part. This technique only works when the water is calm. A storm, a strong current, even a single wave, and the whole show's off. So skimmers must read the river like a musician reads rhythm, timing every movement with the pulse of the world around them. And they nest on open sandbanks where the eggs blend perfectly into the color of the earth. No nests, no twigs, just faith in invisibility. It's risky, sure, but it works. Until, of course, humans show up with boats, noise, and rising waters. In many parts of Africa, these riverbanks are vanishing, and so are the skimmers. Here's a fun fact. When light hits their eyes at the right angle, it reflects red like tiny embers. So when they glide low over the water at night, their eyes glow in the dark, like sparks from the river's soul. And that brings us here. If life's about staying above water, how many of us could glide this close to danger and never lose balance? Because the African skimmer reminds us, grace isn't about playing safe. It's about flying so close to the edge, you touch it. Some birds are beautiful, some birds are powerful, and then there's the marabou stork, the bird that makes you question if nature has a sense of humor. Let's be honest, this creature looks like it was designed by committee, and everyone gave up halfway. A bald pink head, massive beak, hunched shoulders, and a scruffy throat pouch that looks like a forgotten balloon. If the Grim Reaper had a bird, this would be it. And yet, this ugly giant might be one of the most important animals in Africa. You see, the marabou doesn't hunt, it cleans up. It's the undertaker of the savanna, feeding on carrion, scraps, and anything left behind by lions or vultures. Gross? Maybe. Essential? Absolutely. Because without this bird, the plains would rot in their own leftovers. It's the sanitation department of the wild, turning death into life by keeping the ecosystem balanced. And it's tough, built to handle Africa's harshest heat and foulest smells. That bald head, a perfect design for hygiene. No feathers means no mess while digging inside carcasses. Its wingspan can reach 3 meters, and when it takes off, it's like watching a prehistoric shadow glide across the sky. Silent, slow, commanding. Here's the weirdest twist. Despite its job, the marabou hangs out with flamingos. Yup, the goth kid and the ballet dancers share the same lake. While the flamingos filter feed delicately, the marabou just waits for leftovers. or something unlucky enough to wander too close. It's not picky. Fun fact, in some African towns, these storks perch on rooftops and lampposts like oversized pigeons. Locals call them policemen because they stand perfectly still, watching everything with that cold, judgmental stare. And yes, they smell awful. But here's the question. Why do we call something ugly just because it does the dirty work? Wouldn't you rather live in a clean world thanks to the creatures that no one applauds? Because the marabou stork may not win any beauty contests, but without it, the savanna wouldn't shine. And that's the ultimate twist. Sometimes the most unpleasant ones keep the whole world beautiful. You hear it before you see it. A deep rumbling boom that sounds like thunder rolling across the savanna. That's not weather. That's the southern ground hornbill, Africa's walking bass drum, and one of the most commanding birds on Earth. This is no small fry, standing over a meter tall, cloaked in glossy black feathers, with that unmistakable red facial skin that looks like war paint. They don't just walk, they march in groups that move with military precision, covering miles of grassland every day, hunting snakes, lizards, and even tortoises. Yeah, tortoises. They literally crack open shells with those massive beaks like nature's version of a can opener. And here's the fun twist. Despite looking like villains from an ancient legend, these birds are deeply family-oriented. They live in clans led by a dominant breeding pair, while the rest help raise their chicks. Everyone hunts together, guards together, and babysits together. It's the bird equivalent of a small village, complete with drama, loyalty, and long-term commitment. Their booming call isn't just for show, it carries for miles. A rolling duet between mates, often performed at dawn. If you've ever watched the sun rise over the African plains and heard that deep call vibrate through your chest, you'll understand why locals once believed the hornbill's voice could summon rain. But here's a sad truth. These majestic birds are disappearing fast. Habitat loss and superstition have made them one of Africa's most threatened species. Some traditions believe their presence brings bad luck, while others see them as messengers between the living and the dead. Ironically, their disappearance might be the real omen. Fun fact, they're the longest-lived land birds in Africa, surviving up to 60 years in the wild. That's longer than many lions. Generations of the same family can share the same territory for decades, their deep voices echoing through time like ancient songs. So here's the question. If a creature can balance raw power with deep devotion, does that make it a beast? Or something wiser than us? Because the southern ground hornbill isn't just another bird stalking the savanna. It's a heartbeat you can hear through the earth itself. And when that sound fades, the silence it leaves behind might just be the loudest thing Africa ever hears. If the savanna had a stand-up comedian, this would be it. Meet the helmeted guinea fowl, a spotted, noisy, slightly ridiculous bird that somehow manages to survive everything. It's like a chicken, a turkey, and a polka dot disco ball all rolled into one. They roam the open plains in noisy flocks, running around with their heads bobbing and their feet moving twice as fast as their brains. Seriously, they don't fly unless something is very wrong. And even then, it's more like an emergency hop. But what they lack in grace, they make up for in personality. They gossip, they argue, they call out danger before anyone else notices. If there's a lion nearby, you'll hear it first from the guinea fowl. Screaming warnings like the savanna's unpaid alarm system. That bony blue head with its horn-like casque might look like bad fashion, but it's genius design. It helps them push through tall grass without injury. And those white-spotted feathers? Perfect camouflage against the dappled light of the bush. Up close, they look fancy. From a distance, they vanish. Fun fact, these birds are obsessed with dust baths. They gather in groups, flop into the dirt, and flap like maniacs, sending clouds of dust everywhere just to keep parasites off their feathers. It's hilarious, chaotic, and weirdly wholesome. But here's the thing. Under all that comedy, the helmeted guinea fowl is a survivor. They eat everything. Seeds, insects, small reptiles, you name it. They've adapted to farms, roads, cities. Wherever there's trouble, they find a way to fit in. And they're monogamous too. One partner for life, often seen side by side, moving like a tiny old married couple who've been arguing for 20 years, but still can't be apart. In some African cultures, they're seen as symbols of protection and community. Their constant chatter a reminder that many voices together can keep danger away. So here's a thought. If teamwork, humor, and noise can keep you alive in lion country, maybe silly isn't such a bad survival strategy after all. Because while the predators rule by fear, the helmeted guinea fowl rules by friendship and sheer joyful chaos. And maybe that's why they're still here, clucking, laughing, and proving that sometimes the noisiest ones live the longest. If you've ever seen a buffalo with a bird on its back and thought, "That's cute," you were looking at one of Africa's most underrated hustlers, the yellow-billed oxpecker. Cute? Maybe. But this little bird is less friendly sidekick and more tiny feathered vampire with benefits. Here's the deal. Oxpeckers and big mammals like giraffes, hippos, and buffalo have a mutual arrangement. The bird gets a steady meal of ticks, dead skin, and insects. The animal gets a free grooming session. Win-win, right? Well, mostly. Because the oxpecker doesn't just eat parasites, it also drinks blood. When it finds a wound, it keeps it open, picking and licking to keep the blood flowing. Sounds dark? That's nature's twist. The host animal doesn't seem to mind. In fact, many tolerate it because that same bird's sharp eyes and constant chirping act as an early warning system against predators. They're like flying security alarms with questionable ethics. You'll spot them clinging to rhinos, zebras, even elephants, chatting and squabbling as they ride around all day. Their claws are specially adapted for gripping fur, and their beaks, bright yellow with a red tip, are built to probe deep. They move with speed, precision, and zero personal boundaries. Fun fact, oxpeckers have a weird way of bonding. They sing to their hosts while feeding, a series of tick-tick-tick notes that help calm the animal, like a dentist humming while working on your teeth. Creepy? A little. Effective? Very. And despite the strange relationship, these birds play a vital ecological role. By controlling tick populations, they help keep herds healthy, literally cleaning Africa's giants one bite at a time. But here's the philosophical part. Is the oxpecker a helper or a parasite? A doctor or a thief? Maybe it's both. Because in the wild, survival isn't black or white. It's about finding balance between giving and taking. So next time you see one hitching a ride on a rhino's back, remember, that little bird isn't freeloading. It's running a full-time cleaning business with a taste for drama. Because in the savanna, even the smallest wings can make the biggest partnerships work, as long as everyone gets something out of it. Imagine the sky itself coming alive. Millions of wings moving like smoke, shimmering like a storm. That's not CGI. That's the red-billed quelea, the most abundant bird on Earth, and possibly the most chaotic. At first glance, one quelea doesn't look like much. It's tiny, sparrow-sized, with a bright red bill and golden brown feathers. Cute, harmless, ordinary, until it brings 100 million of its closest friends. When they take flight together, the air hums, a living, breathing cloud twisting and rippling like a murmuration gone mad. It's mesmerizing and terrifying. These birds travel in flocks so massive they can stretch for 5 kilometers. They move as one, think as one, and eat as one. And that's where the trouble starts. Because when a quelea swarm descends on a field of grain, it doesn't just feed, it erases. They can strip entire farms bare in a single afternoon. Farmers call them feathered locusts, and honestly, the name fits. But here's the twist. This so-called pest is also a marvel of coordination. Each bird reacts in milliseconds to the movements of its neighbors, turning chaos into art. Scientists study their flocks to understand swarm intelligence, how thousands of individuals move like a single organism. No leader, no plan, just instinct, trust, and perfect timing. Fun fact, Quelleias build enormous communal nests, sometimes thousands in one tree, each woven from grass like a hanging city. The chatter is deafening, the motion non-stop. To the human ear, it's noise. To the savanna, it's life. And here's the deeper thought. When humans destroy their natural feeding grounds, the Quelleias simply adapt, following crops, surviving, thriving. They're not villains, they're opportunists. Proof that nature doesn't play by our rules. So here's the question. If survival means overwhelming the odds, is it wrong to win by sheer numbers? Would you rather be one rare beauty or part of a force that moves the sky itself? Because love them or hate them, the red-billed quelea reminds us that unity, even loud, messy unity, can change landscapes, rewrite balance, and fill the world with motion. And in Africa's grand orchestra of wings, sometimes chaos is the conductor. You'll hear this bird before you ever see it. A sharp metallic clang, clang, ringing across the wetlands, like someone hammering steel on a forge. That's the blacksmith lapwing, a bird that sounds like it's working overtime in a metal shop, but is actually just guarding its turf. It's sleek, black and white, dressed like it's going to a formal dinner, but never forgot its attitude at home. And wow, does it have attitude? These lapwings are tiny warriors, bold, loud, and completely fearless. They'll dive bomb eagles, herons, even humans who wander too close to their nests. To them, size doesn't matter. Pride does. Their nests sit right on open ground, so every approach feels like a personal insult. Here's the fun twist. The name blacksmith isn't just about the sound. That ringing call actually comes from the way they shout in pairs, their voices syncing perfectly like hammer and anvil. It's not just defense, it's communication, coordination, a duet of danger. When they're not yelling at intruders, they're surprisingly graceful. They patrol shallow waters on long, elegant legs, snatching insects and small crustaceans with surgical precision. They move in jerks and pauses like little mechanical toys brought to life, half machine, half heartbeat. And yes, they fake injuries to lure predators away from their chicks. They'll drag a wing, limp pitifully, then take off laughing, probably, the second the danger's gone. That's not just intelligence, that's theater. Broadway-level drama on a muddy floodplain. Fun fact, their black and white contrast isn't just for show. It helps them stay visible to each other across blinding sunlight. A built-in uniform for instant recognition. Wherever water glints, you'll find their reflections, bright, defiant, alive. So here's the question. What's louder, a roar of power or a cry of courage? Because this little lapwing doesn't need strength to be heard. It only needs purpose. In a world where silence means survival, the blacksmith lapwing dares to make noise. And somehow, that noise becomes music. If birds had sitcoms, this one would be the lead character. Clever, expressive, and constantly getting into trouble. Meet the red-billed hornbill, the small but unforgettable star of Africa's open woodlands, and yes, the real-life inspiration for Zazu from The Lion King. You'll know it instantly. That long, curved, crimson bill, glowing like a neon crescent, and a face that always looks mildly annoyed, as if it's been managing the savanna's schedule for too long. They're endlessly curious, hopping, pecking, poking, checking under every leaf like detectives who don't trust anyone. But here's where it gets fascinating. Their nesting strategy is straight-up genius. When the female lays her eggs inside a tree cavity, she seals herself in with mud and droppings, leaving just a tiny slit for the male to feed her through. That's right, she bricks herself up for weeks. He's on the outside bringing her food day after day until the chicks hatch and she breaks out again. Slimmer, hungry, but victorious. That's loyalty, that's teamwork, and probably a trust exercise no human couple could survive. Their diet? Anything that moves. Insects, seeds, even small lizards. The red-billed hornbill doesn't waste opportunities. They follow herds of elephants and antelope, snatching up bugs kicked loose by their massive feet. It's like running a restaurant under a stampede. Chaotic, profitable, and strangely efficient. Fun fact, these hornbills are expert communicators. They use body language as much as calls. Head bobbing, tail flicking, wing drooping. A whole vocabulary of motion that keeps the family in sync. And yes, they mate for life, often seen sitting side by side on a branch at dusk, quietly grooming each other's feathers after a long day of bickering. But here's the twist. Despite their small size, hornbills play a massive role in the ecosystem. They spread seeds far and wide, turning empty landscapes into new forests with every meal. So here's the question. What's more powerful, strength or consistency? Because sometimes saving a forest isn't about being the biggest or loudest. It's about showing up every day, doing the work, and feeding the world one seed at a time. The red-billed hornbill may look like comic relief, but in Africa's grand story, it's the quiet hero who keeps the show running. If the red-billed hornbill is the comedian of the savanna, then the African gray hornbill is its cooler, quieter cousin. The one who doesn't talk much but somehow steals every scene. Sleek silver-gray feathers, long curved bill with that dark casque running along the top. It's a look that says, business in the front, mystery in the back. They glide through acacia trees with calm precision, heads held high, eyes sharp, always alert. They're not flashy, but they don't have to be. They carry the same quiet confidence as a samurai who's already won the fight. Like all hornbills, they're brilliant problem solvers. You'll see them flipping leaves, prying bark, snatching insects or small reptiles with those perfectly engineered beaks. They don't chase chaos, they plan their moves. Every action looks deliberate, like nature gave them just enough style to hide how dangerous they are. And yes, they're family birds too. When it's nesting season, the female locks herself inside a tree cavity, just like her red-billed cousin, sealed in by mud and food deliveries from her mate. He becomes the provider, hunting tirelessly, passing fruit and insects through the narrow slit day after day. It's a partnership built on patience and timing. No grand gestures, just quiet devotion. Fun fact, that casque on their bill isn't just decoration. It amplifies their calls, turning their harsh cock, cock, cock into a sound that can carry for kilometers. It's like having a built-in megaphone, a perfect way to shout, "This is my tree," without moving an inch. Despite their elegance, African gray hornbills are tough. They survive where other birds struggle. Dry bush, scorching heat, dusty savannas. They're the understated survivors of Africa, thriving not because they dominate, but because they adapt without complaining. And here's the thought. In a world obsessed with bright colors and loud voices, maybe grace is the ultimate rebellion. Would you rather shine for a moment or endure for a lifetime? Because the African gray hornbill proves that quiet strength doesn't fade, it echoes. Long after the show-offs lose their color, his steady call still rolls across the dry wind. A reminder that wisdom doesn't shout, it just endures. If elegance had wings, it would look like this. The gray-crowned crane doesn't just walk through the savanna, it glides. Golden feathers crown its head like a burst of sunlight, a shimmering halo that gives the bird its royal name. It's so stunning that many people think it's mythical, until it moves and you realize it's very real, and very much aware of how good it looks. Standing nearly a meter tall, this crane is a mix of soft gray, white, and black, topped with that glittering crown of stiff, golden plumes. And when it dances, oh, it dances. Mates leap, bow, twirl, and flap their wings in perfect rhythm, calling with deep, resonant, honk-hoo notes that sound like distant horns. It's not just courtship, it's theater. Grace and joy, choreographed by instinct. Here's the twist. They mate for life. Once a crane finds its partner, they're inseparable, moving through grasslands and wetlands like royal couples on parade. They nest together, raise their chicks together, and when danger comes, they'll fight side by side. Elegant, yes, but never fragile. Fun fact, unlike most cranes, the gray-crowned crane can roost in trees. Those long, slender toes allow them to perch high up, something no other crane in the world can do. Imagine a bird this tall sleeping in a tree like it's no big deal. That's confidence on another level. And beyond beauty, they carry meaning. In Uganda, this crane is literally a national symbol. It stands proudly on the country's flag and coat of arms. To many Africans, it represents peace, harmony, and dignity. When you see one moving through morning mist, you understand why. But here's the heartbreak. As wetlands shrink and human activity expands, these birds are losing their breeding grounds. Their royal crowns are becoming rarer sights each year. It's a silent tragedy, the kind you only notice when the music stops. So here's the question. What happens to a kingdom when its symbols fade? Can we still call a land beautiful if the creatures that define it vanish? Because the gray-crowned crane isn't just decoration, it's the soul of the savanna dressed in gold. And if that soul disappears, what will rise to dance in its place? If the savanna had a jester, a loud, proud, slightly unhinged entertainer, it would be the northern black korhan. This bird doesn't just live on the open plains, it owns them, strutting like it's on stage and heckling everyone who dares walk by. At first glance, it's handsome in a minimalist way. Bold black chest, white belly, sandy back perfectly matching the dry grass. But then it opens its beak and all that elegance goes out the window. Its call is a wild metallic kra-ka-ka-ka-ka, somewhere between a car alarm and a comedian trying to make sure you don't fall asleep. It's loud, it's brash, and it carries for miles. In other words, this bird has main character energy. Here's the fun part. Male korhans are performers, and they've perfected one of the strangest courtship displays in the bird world. They take off into the sky, flying upward in a steep climb, then suddenly, they freeze midair, wings tucked, and drop like a stone. Just before hitting the ground, they open their wings again, swooping out dramatically. It's a stunt that looks halfway between bravery and insanity. A love dance designed to say, "Hey ladies, I survived gravity, date me." And if that's not dramatic enough, these birds are territorial to the point of obsession. They'll attack anything that moves too close. Snakes, jackals, even people. Imagine a 1-kilogram bird trying to fight a jeep and actually meaning it. But beneath the swagger is clever design. That mottled brown plumage hides them perfectly among dry grass when they need to vanish. They can stand motionless for minutes, blending into the earth so well you'd walk right past without seeing them. A master of loud entrances and quiet exits. Fun fact, locals call it the comedy bird or drunkard bird because when startled, it runs off flapping clumsily as if it just remembered how to use its wings mid-panic. Yet for all the humor, the northern black korhan plays a serious role in the savanna's rhythm. Its calls mark territory boundaries and signal the start of the rains. So here's the thought. Is courage about looking graceful or just refusing to back down? Because this bird proves you can be noisy, awkward, and still completely unshakable. The northern black korhan doesn't care if you laugh. It's too busy owning the spotlight. Whichever you choose, remember this. The sky over Africa isn't empty, it's alive. And every sunrise begins not with light, but with the sound of wings. So, after 24 stories of color, chaos, power, and grace, what do you see now when you think of Africa? Not just lions and sunsets, right? You see the motion, the pulse, the wings, from the flightless might of the ostrich to the golden elegance of the gray-crowned crane. Every bird here carries a different version of freedom. Some run, some glide, some just strut through life with attitude. But all of them belong to the same orchestra of survival. Listen closely. The fish eagle's cry echoes over the river, a national anthem written by wind and water. The bee eaters streak through the sky, painting the air with red and turquoise. And somewhere down below, the marabou stork stalks through the dust, reminding us that even decay has its place in the rhythm of life. It's not chaos, it's choreography. Every beat, every flap, every whistle fits into something bigger. A continent that breathes in birdsong, a place where the sunrise is never silent. And here's the real twist. These aren't just birds, they're storytellers. They record the weather, the seasons, the health of the land itself. When they vanish, it's not just silence, it's warning. But when they thrive, the world sings louder. So what do we do with that? Maybe protect a tree instead of cutting it. Maybe listen a little longer before we speak. Because beauty like this isn't endless. It's borrowed, and it asks for respect in return. So I'll leave you with one question. Of all these wings, which one stayed in your mind? The predator, the dancer, the trickster, or the quiet one that just belonged?